let me just put this to rest. Chrono Trigger is amazing. It is undoubtedly one of the finest games ever created. Man, this game is good. Like, really, really good. I first played it near its release 20 years ago, and it still residuates in my mind as a fantastic game. But I've only ever really played through it that one time, and ever since then, I just accepted the fact that, yeah, that game's great. But I never asked myself, why? Why is this game so good? What about this makes it so much better than other RPGs? I mean, at its core, it's just like any other RPG. You have a cool looking main hero dude, you get a cast of collected characters to join you, fight monsters, get experience, level up, buy stuff, plot, fight harder things, throw in some time travel, boom, you got Chrono Trigger. At its most distilled, yes, that's Chrono Trigger. But upon replaying it for this video, it dawned on me that this is one of the most finely and expertly crafted games in the RPG genre. Presentation alone makes it stand out, perfectly capturing the art style of Akira Toriyama, with some particular awe-inspiring bosses. The time travel mechanic brings you to environments that you wouldn't get in most games. We've seen the medieval type stuff a billion times before, but to have that alongside the distant future, the distant past, the Ice Age? Now that's cool! Aw, damn it, that was a pun. The game begins with the main silent protagonist, Chrono, being woken up by his mother. It's 1000 AD, which is considered the present for this game, and there's a big celebratory festival happening in the town square. Chrono goes there to party and meets up with a young woman named Marley. They go to see Luca, a childhood friend of Chrono, who has a crazy new invention to show off at the festival. Mistakes were made, and the two are thrust 400 years into the past, and Chrono's journey begins. Eventually, you'll learn in the year 1999, a creature known as Lavos breaks through the earth and destroys life as we know it. By the way, I realize everybody pronounces names differently, so I'm just gonna go with how I've always said them. Not saying that's right, not saying that's wrong, just going with what I'm familiar with. So, Marley, Magus, Epoch. Even though I know that last one is actually the British way of pronouncing it, but whatever. It sounds cooler than epic. It's great that this is how the story kicks off. Action gets people involved and is usually the starting hook, but Chrono Trigger eschews that and instead puts players into a festival where they can spend as much or as little time as they want goofing around. Typically, most games introduce minigames or arcade-esque locations to give the players a break and a moment of relaxation from the tension of the main story. With it right at the beginning of Chrono Trigger, it's immediately fun in the traditional sense. There's a bunch of minigames to play and you're immediately enjoying yourself. Except when you keep picking the wrong person in the four-man race they never win. Jesus Christ, come on, Cadillac! The opening minigame festival does wonders in numerous ways. Starting off with something so lighthearted and enjoyable makes the sudden danger have that contrast needed to feel urgent. Going from slamming sodas and beating up a robot to your new friend vanishing in front of your eyes gives you that oh shit moment that gives the player motivation to follow afterwards. And of course, Chrono steps up to go after Marley, because that's the kind of guy he is, which we'll see repeatedly throughout the game. Now, of course, these are more than just mini-games. They have layers of importance to them. This is extremely integral because, unbeknownst to the player, these affect not one, but two major plot points in the game's story. But I'll get to those. With Chrono traveling into the past, this is where the real adventure starts, and players get their first taste of Chrono Trigger's battle system. This is one of the game's many strongest points. The battle system is so cool and surprisingly simplistic. You have three options in battle: attack, use a technique or magic spell, or use an item. For every character, that's it. They were able to have depth in every battle without it being complex, which is a mark of an excellent battle system. Every character learns a bunch of techniques, or techs, that are unique to them. A lot of these techs can hit multiple enemies, either within a small area, a straight line, or maybe everybody there. Battles are not static. Once a fight starts, your party and the enemies move into position. While waiting for time bars to fill, enemies will wander around the field, or maybe they'll knock your party members around, or use each other for attacks. This wandering movement adds depth to the battle system. You can use Chrono's Cyclone technique to hit a bunch of enemies in a circle, or you could try to wait for just the right moment to get some extra targets in there. Some enemies will deliver powerful counterattacks if right next to another enemy, so maybe best to avoid hitting them.
doesn't sound like much, but this is what makes battles engaging. To make fights as efficient as possible, you need to pay attention to enemy behaviors and positioning instead of just mashing the A button every fight. What makes the tech system even better is your party. Eventually, your team members begin to learn double techniques, allowing two members who are ready for an action to combine attacks. And these are just so cool. Luca adding fire to Chrono's Cyclone was such a game changer, and who doesn't love using Chrono and Frog's X-Strike? These double techs encourage experimenting with different party members just to see what kind of sweet attacks they can create together. And if that wasn't enough, even later in the game, you begin to learn triple techniques, allowing all three party members to create a devastating combo attack. It's the spectacle and usefulness of these that keeps battles enjoyable all the way to the end of the game. And they weren't exclusive either. Every single party member can learn double and triple techniques with every other member. Well, except for Magus, because he's a dick. The double and triple tech system also exemplifies another strong suit of Chrono Trigger. Every character is good. Maybe you like some more than the others, sure, but none of them stand out as bad. You know how in other RPGs with a large playable cast, there's always at least one person that you cannot wait to take out of the party? Chrono Trigger doesn't have that. They're all unique, developed, and interesting. Seriously, it's hard to not have Frog in your party because he's just so cool. Ayla is such a powerhouse that it's difficult to not have her, so on and so on. It's a great problem to have when it's difficult to decide who not to bring. Very few games can say that. Hell, even Chrono Trigger's NPCs get more development than some main characters in other games. You can hear about their personal relationships with other people, their family members, and how they're struggling with current events. They come off as people and not information dispensaries. And you see how they change as people because of your actions altering the past. This is a pretty big deal, by the way. Having a game about time travel where the things you do in the past actually change the future timelines. I realize that's such a no-brainer thing to consider and that Ocarina of Time made it work too. Okay, yeah, I get that, but no game has done it to the extent that Chrono Trigger has. There's too many examples to mention, but play the game and take in how the NPC dialogue changes and resolves around your time-traveling antics.
I asked a question online and to a lot of my friends, and if you played the game before, I'll ask it to you too. Based off of your memory alone, without looking it up, how long of a game is Chrono Trigger? I got a lot of very similar responses, and they weren't really all that shocking. A lot of people said at least 40 hours. Some people said about 30 hours if you know what you're doing. I even had a few people say it's about 25 hours or so. The game's actual length? 15 hours. 17 if you choose to do everything.
It took me just over 17 hours playing through the game again. And for the record, I didn't remember exactly everything. I haven't played through this in well over 15 years, so I remember very little, especially about the late game stuff. So 17 hours of playtime was essentially playing it blind again. Chrono Trigger is a very short RPG, and that's another one of its key strengths. The biggest thing I noticed while playing through it again is that at no point do you ever need to grind. Well, that's a dirty word when it comes to any RPG. Grinding. That process of spending far too long just building experience points so that you're strong enough to fight whatever boss. Chrono Trigger doesn't have that. So long as you're not running away from every single fight imaginable, the game expertly paces you to get the right amount of experience points and levels that is needed to overcome any difficult part. Sure, you can grind if you get stuck, but it's never your numbers that's holding you back. The only thing holding you back is how bad you suck. The first time I died while playing through this again was the boss fight against Magus. Dude's tough, he'll mess you up. Again, it wasn't because my level was too low. All I had to do was change up my battle tactics and try again. Sure enough, I beat him without needing to grind. I've seen online walkthroughs that suggest you don't take on the final boss of the game until you're at least level 70, which is ridiculous. I beat the game in the low 50s, and even that was more than necessary. I'm just so good at games, you guys. No grinding isn't the only thing attributing to a short playtime, though. It's the complete lack of fluff in the story, and I mean that in a positive way. The story never misses a beat, never goes on too long, and progresses swiftly. To give you a refresher, you end up in the future finding Robo in only about 2 hours. Everything you do never deviates from the main objective: defeat Lavos. Too many other games introduce side stories or quests or whatever, and you completely forget what you're supposed to be doing in the first place. Not in Chrono Trigger. Everything in the main plot comes back to Lavos. You're not just helping Frog defeat Magus to break his curse and fulfill his vengeance. That's what Frog wants. You're there because you heard that Magus was the one summoning forth Lavos. You don't go into the distant past because you want to see dinosaurs or some shit. You go there because you believe that's when Lavos first arrived. Anyone you help along the way is because their perils tie into Lavos, keeping the story moving forward in parallel, never sideways. Because the game is so short, it's extremely replayable. Every story moment is important, and because there's so few, they're memorable. And some of these moments are simply incredible.
At this point, I am going to spoil the crap out of the game. If you haven't played it yet and you're planning on doing so, go ahead and click here or skip to this time to avoid a lot of story bits. I'm being super serious right now. Major spoiler warning.
I always remembered the game having awesome moments in the story, but it wasn't until I played it again that I realized how brilliant a lot of them are. The first one that comes to mind is the trial. To give some context, Marley, who Chrono meets at the Millennial Fair, is actually Princess Nadia of the Castle Guardia. When Chrono returns from the past with her, he's immediately accused of kidnapping her and is brought to court to be judged upon. The witnesses judge Chrono's character based on his actions during the Millennial Fair. Therefore, your actions. This was way before morality systems showed up in every single RPG ever, so to suddenly have a game that showed that there were consequences for your actions was pretty mind-bending. You thought it was harmless at the time, but they say a lot about you. Picking up Marley's pendant before making sure she's okay, or stealing an old man's lunch to heal yourself so you can beat up a robot some more. These are a couple of the small things that makes witnesses suspicious of Chrono. This was practically unheard of for console RPGs of the time, and the best part about the trial is that you were warned. The moment you wake up in Chrono's house, you get ready for the fair, about to have a good time, and your mother says to you, "I want you to behave yourself today." This seemingly innocuous statement was the setup for the trial, and much like the effects of time travel, goes to show you that your actions have meaning and consequences. And let's be real, the first time we all played Chrono Trigger, we all got the guilty verdict. We stole lunch, we tried to get Marley's shiny pendant first, we weren't patient while Marley picked out candy, and probably lied to the jury. Like I mentioned earlier, all of those fun minigames around the fair weren't just minigames. You were being judged the entire time. Another one of my favorite moments happens in the distant past, as the defeat of the Reptites coincides with the meteor landing on the Earth, the same one that killed off the dinosaurs. Of course, it wasn't just a red meteor. It's revealed that it's Lavos, flying through space, and he collides into Earth. And for the first time in the game, you hear the terrifying screech of Lavos. To me, that sound is just as iconic to the game as the swinging pendulum at the beginning, or traveling through time on the Epoch, or using X/, or do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. The arrival of Lavos also sets up the build-up of you, as the player, squaring off against him. We were shown in the future his destructive power. Now, the mystery of when Lavos arrives is solved, and it's about you getting ready to destroy him. The explosion of Lavos causes the Ice Age, and the Dark Ages time period has another fantastic story moment. The party is in the Kingdom of Zeal, floating high above the clouds, and they're chasing after Queen Zeal, who is being controlled by Lavos to feed him more energy so he can grow stronger. She uses her daughter Shala's magic to do so, not knowing the destruction she is bringing forth. Naturally, you try to stop all of this, and this causes Lavos himself to be summoned forth. And then, you fight him. And actually fight him too. This isn't a cutscene that plays out or a predetermined battle. You don't fight him and then run away or have the story continue only when you deal so much damage to him. You are actually facing off against Lavos with the same amount of strength he has at the end of the game. You're given an actual glimpse to his true power. And of course, this power completely obliterates the party. This further enforces how horrific Lavos is, and strengthens your resolve against him. Being beaten by him only makes you want to strike back harder. This leads into what is easily the most pivotal moment of the entire game. The party is down, Shala cannot stop or control Lavos, and Lavos prepares to attack once more. Chrono, as stalwart as he's ever been, rises once more to continue to fight. Lavos refocuses his attack, and in a single, blinding flash, Chrono dies. This was unheard of. Other games had character death in them, sure, but Chrono was different. He wasn't one of the additional party members you get along the journey or an NPC that assisted you throughout. He was the game's proxy character. He was a silent protagonist so that it was easy for the player to project themselves onto him. He was that super cool looking character we all wanted to be. He was the main hero of the game. He was you. And he dies. This leads into another pivotal moment, and that's getting Chrono back. And you can only do this by doing the mini-games back at the Millennial Fair. One of them awards you with a Chrono doll, and through a series of events, you can use the Chrono trigger item to freeze this moment in time and swap out Chrono with the clone. And then you get Chrono back, which results in a very touching moment. What's incredible about this is that it's completely optional. You don't have to get Chrono back. In fact, there are probably people who couldn't figure out how to get him back. It's technically a side quest, albeit a worthwhile one as he's the best party member you could have. It's not a forced story moment. It isn't something that happens every time you play. Getting Chrono back is up to you. From here, you're essentially at the end of the game. You can go face Lavos whenever you're ready, but there's a handful of side quests you can do. But what's great about the side quests is their importance. They don't just exist to get you more experience or rare equipment. Each one is about the development of the characters. You're not raiding the ruins for loot, you're helping Frog lay his friend Cyrus's ghost to rest. Getting the rainbow shell isn't for sweet stuff, it ends up being a key item in restoring Marley's broken relationship with her father, the king. Yeah, you restore the forest, but more importantly, you see why Luca got into machinery, and the guilt she's carried with her since her youth, and oh my god, I just want to hug her! You're doing the side quests because you want to help them, not because you want the reward at the end. Much like the short story, the small amount of side quests makes each one important and relevant to the plot and the characters. Upon completing the game, you get what may be the most significant thing from Chrono Trigger's legacy, and that's New Game Plus. That term didn't exist until Chrono Trigger, and numerous games have it now. But unlike so many other games that have it because it's a fun thing to do, New Game Plus is tied into the story and the mechanics of Chrono Trigger. There's about a dozen endings. The one you get is dependent on when you choose to fight Lavos. Using New Game Plus, you can fight him long before you were meant to in the story. There's even a new gateway to him right at the beginning of the game. Remember the Undersea Palace when Lavos arrives and kills Chrono? In New Game Plus mode, it's possible to beat him and win the game right there. And of course, this gets you an ending you wouldn't get elsewhere. And the PlayStation 1 and DS versions of Chrono Trigger each added an additional ending to help tie it in better to the game's sequel, Chrono Cross. This is another reason why the game's short playtime is so vital. Making it so quick to play through makes it easier for you to go back on New Game Plus and get different endings. It was more than just a way to extend playtime, it was necessary to see everything that the game had to offer. And that's genius.
I realize I've been doing nothing but singing praises of this game, and you're probably wondering if there's even anything that I don't like about it. And yeah, there is. I think the final boss fight against Lavos is lame.
Lavos is cool! This large parasitic creature that we've been teased about throughout the whole game is Lavos! And then you kill him, and you go into his shell where you fight this thing. Okay, so this is the actual Lavos inside the Lavos. Fine, I'll accept that. But then you kill that thing, and out pops this thing who is the actual Lavos? These guys are dumb. Regardless of the fact that they're well designed and have challenging fights or whatever, they don't belong. all this build-up and tension to creature labos, and it pulls the whole "this is who is really behind it all" villain type trope. It devalues creature labos, who I think is the most memorable and the coolest looking. And the boss rush type fight he does if you face him in the Black Omen is pretty lame too. This isn't a huge detraction from the game as a whole, it's really just a nitpick that I have. And it's the only nitpick that I can think of. Everything else is just too good.
I don't think I could ever say enough good things about Chrono Trigger. I've always liked it a lot since I first played it, but playing it again helped me realize how incredible it truly is. I have a far greater appreciation for it now than I ever have before. That's why my final rating for this game is a clock without hands out of 10. It's elegant. Everything about it is finely crafted from the dream team of RPG creators. The battle system is simple so that anyone can pick up and play it while allowing depth and strategies in tougher fights. The art style makes it stand out like no other on the console, with every set piece and every enemy and every character and every group technique looking great. The story never strays from its clear objective, and every side quest is important to the characters. Its short length lends itself naturally to getting the multiple endings, enhanced by the OG New Game Plus mode. It absolutely still holds up to this day, and likely will continue to do so for years to come. Like a clock without hands, Chrono Trigger is timeless. If there's ever a list made of the essential RPG games you must play to truly appreciate the genre, Chrono Trigger will be at the top of the list. If you haven't played the game before, I urge you to do so. If you have played it, go back and do it again with a newfound admiration for everything that this game is. And then I invite you all to join me in writing angry letters to Square asking them why they haven't made another Chrono Trigger game yet! Ah!
Hey, thank you so much for listening to me just gush about Chrono Trigger. If you haven't yet, please subscribe for more videos in the future. And if you want something else to watch, check out the video I did on Mega Man X7. It's a doozy!